My in-laws tried to turn my husband against me, so I let him watch their mask slip all on his own. I still remember the first time I met Marcus's family. It was a humid August afternoon, the kind where your blouse sticks to your back and makeup seems pointless. His mother, Judith, had answered the door with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Behind her stood his father, Robert, arms crossed and eyebrows raised, as if I was there to sell something he wasn't interested in buying. "So you're the famous Eliza," Judith had said, giving me a once-over that lingered a bit too long on my designer watch, a graduation gift from my parents. "Marcus has told us so much about you." I'd smiled through the discomfort, clutching the bottle of wine I'd brought, a mid-range Cabernet that I'd agonized over. Not too expensive to seem showy, not too cheap to seem thoughtless. The constant calibration had begun before I'd even crossed their threshold. What struck me most was their home. It wasn't what I'd call rundown, but there were signs. Water stains on the ceiling, a slight draft from windows that didn't quite seal, furniture that had seen better decades. Marcus had mentioned they'd fallen on hard times after his dad's construction business went under during the recession, but he'd always been vague about the details. When Marcus and I got engaged 6 months later, I thought his family had warmed to me. There were hugs instead of handshakes, invitations to Sunday dinners, and inside jokes I was gradually letting on. I wasn't naive enough to think they loved me, but I believed they'd accepted me. That's why I'd started helping without being asked. It began with Marcus's younger brother, Jason. He was halfway through his second year at the state university when I overheard a tense phone call between him and Marcus. "They're saying they'll drop me if the payment isn't made by Friday," Jason had said, his voice cracking. "Dad's trying, but the bank won't extend their line of credit again." That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I made the transfer, $4,800 for Jason's overdue tuition. I didn't tell Marcus, not to hide it, but because I knew how pride worked in his family. Better to let them think the university had made a payment arrangement. A month later, it was Judith's gallbladder surgery. What should have been routine became complicated when they discovered their insurance had lapsed. The bill came to $11,200. I paid it anonymously through the hospital's patient assistance program, making it look like a charity grant. Then came the roof. Robert had been patching it himself for years, but after a particularly brutal winter, even he had to admit it needed professional work. $8,400 later, they had a new roof that wouldn't leak when it rained. I arranged it through my company's contractor, passing it off as a discounted rate through my workplace connections. Each time, I asked for nothing. No recognition, no gratitude, no repayment plan. Just respect. Just to be treated like family. Was that so much? For a while, everything seemed fine. Judith would invite me for coffee, and Robert would save me the sports section of the Sunday paper because he'd noticed I followed basketball. Small gestures that meant the world to me. Until the comments started. It began so subtly, I thought I was imagining it. We'd be at Sunday dinner, and Judith would say something like, "Well, not all of us can afford to get our nails done every week," when I reached for the salt. Or Robert would make a show of examining the wine I'd brought. "Fancy taste for a Thursday, isn't it?" I'd look to Marcus, but he'd be deep in conversation with Jason or scrolling through his phone. When I brought it up on the drive home, he'd shrug it off. "That's just how they talk, Eliza. They don't mean anything by it." But the comments kept coming, growing bolder each time. "Must be nice to work at a place with catered lunches while some people bring leftovers," Judith remarked when I mentioned a work event. "Those designer shoes probably cost more than my first car," Robert chuckled during a barbecue, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then came the whispers. The ones they didn't think I could hear. It was during their anniversary party. I'd stepped out to the patio to take a work call and was returning through the kitchen when I heard my name. I froze just outside the doorway. "Don't know what Marcus sees in Eliza besides the obvious," Judith was saying. "She flaunts her money, but never offers to help. Did you see that bracelet she's wearing?" Meanwhile, Jason's struggling with tuition, and she hasn't offered a dime. "She's stingy," Robert agreed. "All that money, and what does she do with it? Buys herself pretty things while this family scrapes by." "Marcus could have found someone who cares about family," Judith continued. Someone who understands what it means to support each other. Not someone who thinks throwing fancy dinner parties makes her part of this family. I stood there, blood rushing to my face, heart hammering against my ribs. My fingernails dug crescents into my palms as I tried to process what I was hearing. They didn't know. They genuinely didn't know, or were pretending not to know, about everything I'd done. My first instinct was to burst into the kitchen and lay it all out. The tuition, the surgery, the roof over their ungrateful heads. But some deeper instinct held me back. Instead, I retreated to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and rejoined the party with a smile so tight it hurt my cheeks. On the drive home, Marcus commented that I seemed quiet, just tired. I lied, watching the streetlights flash across his face. The face I loved. The face that looked so much like his mother's when he was worried. That night, lying awake beside my sleeping husband, I made a decision. I wouldn't expose myself. I wouldn't beg for recognition or demand gratitude. I wouldn't put Marcus in the middle. But I would pay attention. I would watch. And I would wait. I didn't have to wait long. The very next Sunday dinner, I noticed something I'd been too blind to see before. As we gathered around the table in their newly renovated dining room, another anonymous gift from me. Robert raised his glass. "To my son," he said, eyes glistening with pride as he looked at Marcus. "For always taking care of his family. The new roof was just the latest example of your generosity." Marcus smiled modestly, accepting the praise without a word. Beside him, I sat frozen, fork suspended above my plate. "Yes," Judith chimed in, reaching over to squeeze Marcus's hand. "We don't know what we'd have done without your help with my surgery bills. You've always been our rock." I felt a strange sensation wash over me, like I was floating above the table, watching some bizarre theater play out below. They were thanking him for my money, for my generosity, and he was accepting it. Did he know? Was this some arrangement between them that I wasn't privy to? Or was he truly in the dark? I looked at my husband's face, the face I thought I knew better than my own, and for the first time since we'd met, I couldn't read what was behind his eyes. "More potatoes, Eliza?" Judith offered, her smile as cold as the pit forming in my stomach. "No, thank you," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've had plenty." And I'd had more than enough. The pattern continued for months. Every contribution I made was silently absorbed, then reflected back as Marcus's generosity. It was like watching a magic show where I kept disappearing from my own life. "Your son is so good to us," Judith would tell anyone who would listen at family gatherings. "He paid for Jason's final semester. Such a responsible big brother." Each time, Marcus would accept these accolades with a humble nod or an embarrassed smile. And each time, something inside me withered a little more. One evening, after a particularly effusive round of praise about how Marcus had saved the day, with Robert's dental work, another $3,200 I'd quietly covered, I found myself staring at my husband across our kitchen island. "Do you know where the money for your dad's dental surgery came from?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Marcus looked up from his laptop, brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I helped them out. Dad's insurance wouldn't cover the procedure." My stomach dropped. "You helped them out?" "Well, yeah, that's what family does." He returned to his email. Matter settled. I pressed on. "But Marcus, did you actually transfer the money?" Now he looked confused. "Mom said you didn't want to help because you thought Dad should have taken better care of his teeth. Said it was a waste of money." The room seemed to tilt. What? I never said that. I paid for the entire procedure." His eyes widened with genuine surprise. "You did? But why would Mom say?" "I don't know, Marcus. Why would your mother lie about me refusing to help? Why would she thank you for money that came from my account?" His face hardened. "Are you calling my mother a liar?" And there it was, the trap I'd been circling for months. If I pushed, I became the villain attacking his family. If I stayed silent, I remained the cold, stingy outsider they'd painted me to be. "I'm just confused," I backpedaled. "There seems to be some miscommunication." Marcus closed his laptop. Look, maybe you mentioned helping and they misunderstood. Or maybe you're remembering things differently. My parents wouldn't make this up. The certainty in his voice felt like a physical blow. He wasn't even considering the possibility that his parents might be manipulating the situation. In his mind, either I was confused or lying. That night, I lay awake wondering how many other contributions of mine had been rewritten in the family history. How many times had I been cast as reluctant or stingy or judgmental while my husband received credit for my generosity? The next Sunday dinner confirmed my fears. As we sat around their table, a table I'd helped refinish during my vacation days, Jason raised a toast. To my big brother, who made sure I could graduate. I wouldn't be starting my new job next month without you. Everyone clinked glasses. I sipped my wine slowly, watching Marcus over the rim. Actually, I began, my heart pounding. I'm so glad. Judith cut me off. Eliza, could you help me in the kitchen? The roast needs checking. In the kitchen, she busied herself with stirring gravy that didn't need stirring. I know what you're doing, she said quietly, her back to me. I'm not sure what you mean. She turned, her smile thin. Marcus tells us how you keep track of every penny, how you remind him of what everything costs. My mouth fell open. That's not true. I've never. It's fine, dear. We all have different values. But in this family, we don't keep score. When we help each other, we don't expect parades in our honor. I felt like I'd stepped into some alternate reality. Is that what you think I want? A parade? She patted my arm condescendingly. Let's just focus on being a family, shall we? Marcus has enough pressure without being caught between his wife and his parents. Back at the table, the conversation had moved on. I sat silently, food turning to ash in my mouth, as Robert described how Marcus had come through again when their water heater burst last month. Another $1,200 I'd transferred without fanfare. On the drive home, Marcus reached for my hand. You were quiet tonight. I stared out the window, watching suburban homes blur past. Just thinking. About what? About how your family has constructed an elaborate fantasy where you're the hero and I'm the villain, I wanted to say. About how you believe them over me. About how I've poured thousands into supporting your family while they whisper about my selfishness behind my back. Instead, I squeezed his hand. Nothing important. But as we pulled into our driveway, I made another silent decision. This couldn't continue. Something had to break. I just didn't realize it would be a shoebox that finally shattered the illusion. Spring cleaning had never been Marcus's thing. For 3 years, I'd taken on the seasonal purge of our closets while he conveniently remembered urgent yard work. But this particular Saturday, a sudden downpour had trapped him indoors, and I'd seized the opportunity. The guest room closet needs sorting, I'd said, handing him a roll of garbage bags. Just separate everything into keep, donate, and trash. He groaned but complied, shuffling off while I tackled our bedroom. For 2 hours, the house filled with the sounds of sorting, hangers scraping along rods, box lids being removed, the occasional sneeze from disturbed dust. Then silence. Marcus. I called out, folding a sweater. You fall asleep in there? When he didn't answer, I walked down the hall. The door to the guest room stood ajar. Inside, Marcus sat on the floor surrounded by open boxes. But he wasn't looking at old Christmas decorations or forgotten winter clothes. In his hands was a plain white shoebox, its lid beside him on the carpet. Inside, neatly organized with paper clips, were dozens of documents. My heart stopped. What's all this? He asked quietly, holding up a bank transfer statement with my name and his mother's surgery highlighted in yellow. His voice wasn't accusatory, it was hollow, confused. I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly dizzy. Medical bills. For your mom's gallbladder surgery. He shuffled through more papers. And this. A receipt from the roofing company, my signature at the bottom. Your parents' roof. Last winter. His fingers trembled slightly as he continued through the box. Jason's tuition statements. Robert's dental work. The water heater. Each document carefully preserved, each payment clearly traced to my accounts. You paid for all this? He finally whispered, looking up at me with eyes I couldn't read. I nodded, crossing my arms protectively across my chest. Why didn't you tell me? The question hung between us, heavier than it had any right to be. Why hadn't I told him? The reasons had seemed so clear before. Not wanting to embarrass his family. Not wanting to seem like I was buying their affection. Not wanting to make him feel inadequate. But standing there, watching him discover the truth piece by paper piece, those reasons suddenly felt hollow. Because I thought your family would, I said finally, my voice barely audible. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? I sank down on the bed across from him. They've been thanking you for all of it, Marcus. Every penny I've given them, they've acted like it came from you. I thought you knew. That's not possible. He shook his head, but without conviction. They wouldn't. The roof, your mom's surgery, Jason's tuition, they praise you for all of it. At every family dinner. And when I tried to bring it up, your mom said I refused to help. That I thought it was a waste of money. His face drained of color as he connected moments I could see playing behind his eyes. Sunday toasts. Grateful phone calls. His mother's tearful thank yous for everything he'd done. But why would they lie, he asked, though I could tell he was already piecing it together. I think they wanted to believe it was you, I said gently. It's easier than accepting help from the outsider. He picked up a hospital invoice with my payment confirmation stapled to it. How much? In total? I hesitated. Eliza, how much? Around $38,000, give or take. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Jesus Christ. I didn't do it to keep score, Marcus. I did it because they're family. Your family. But they've been... He couldn't finish the sentence. How could he articulate that his parents had been systematically erasing my contributions while painting me as cold and selfish? We sat in silence, the rain tapping against the window like a metronome counting the seconds of this new reality. Finally, he carefully returned the documents to the shoebox. I'm sorry, he said, his voice thick. I had no idea. I know you didn't. We're going to dinner tomorrow at their house, he said, closing the lid with deliberate care. We can cancel, I offered, though part of me desperately wanted to see what he would do with this new knowledge.
No.
He looked up, something hardening in his eyes. We're definitely going. That night, he was quieter than usual, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of guilt, anger, and determination. He held me tighter in bed, his arms wrapped around me as if afraid I might disappear. And the shoebox? He moved it from the guest room to our bedroom closet, placing it on the shelf where he'd see it every day. As I drifted off to sleep, I wondered what tomorrow's dinner would bring. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, the truth wouldn't need my voice to be heard. Sometimes, evidence speaks louder than accusations. And a shoebox full of receipts had just become the loudest thing in our marriage. Sunday arrived with a weight of anticipation that made it hard to breathe. Marcus had barely spoken all morning, moving through our routines with mechanical precision. When it was time to leave for his parents' house, he carried the bottle of wine I'd chosen with a white-knuckled grip. Are you sure about this? I asked as we sat in the car, engine running but not yet in gear. His eyes met mine, clearer and more certain than I'd seen in months. Absolutely. The drive was quiet, tension building with each mile. I noticed Marcus checking the rearview mirror more than necessary, as if watching our old life recede behind us. Judith opened the door with her usual practice smile. There you are. We were starting to worry. Her eyes lingered on my face for a moment too long before turning to her son. Marcus, your father needs help with the grill. As if on cue, Robert called from the backyard. Son, got a minute? I watched as they separated us, with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed play. Judith steering me toward the kitchen, Robert claiming Marcus for man talk by the grill. The divide-and-conquer strategy they'd perfected over years. You can help me with the salad, Judith said, handing me a knife and cucumber without asking if I wanted to help. Through the kitchen window, I could see Marcus and his father, heads bent in conversation. Robert's hand clapped Marcus's shoulder with proprietary pride. Jason got that promotion he was hoping for, Judith remarked, slicing tomatoes. He says that business degree is already paying off. The business degree I'd helped fund. I smiled tightly. That's wonderful. We're so blessed that our boys look out for each other. Family first. That's what we've always taught them. I focused on slicing the cucumber into perfectly even rounds, each cut a small act of control in a situation spinning beyond it. When we finally gathered around the table, I noticed Jason watching Marcus with unusual intensity, as if sensing something was different. Judith had outdone herself with the meal: roast beef, homemade rolls, 3 different sides. A celebration feast with no stated occasion. Robert raised his glass, beaming at his eldest son. Before we eat, I want to thank Marcus for his help with the patio furniture. That new set makes all the difference for our summer entertaining. I froze, fork hovering above my plate. The patio furniture, a $2,200 purchase I'd made just last month when Judith mentioned their old set had finally collapsed. Marcus set his glass down without drinking. Actually, he said quietly, that was all Eliza. The room went still. Judith's smile flickered but held firm. Well, you're a team, aren't you? What's yours is hers. What's hers is yours. No, Mom, Marcus continued, his voice gaining confidence. Eliza specifically purchased that furniture with her own money, just like she paid for the roof. And your surgery. Robert chuckled uncomfortably. Son, no need to be modest. I'm not being modest, Dad. I'm being honest. Something this family seems to have a problem with. Jason looked between us all, confusion evident. Wait, what's going on? Nothing, dear, Judith said quickly. Your brother's just being silly. Eliza paid for your tuition, Jason, Marcus interrupted. The final semester you were about to be dropped from. She transferred the money directly to the university. Jason's eyes widened, turning to me. Is that true? Before I could answer, Robert's fist came down on the table, rattling the dishes. Now you listen here. No, you listen, Marcus said, his voice calm but unyielding. For months, you've been thanking me for financial help that came entirely from Eliza. You've made her stand there and listen while you praised me for her generosity. And worse, you've been telling me she refused to help, that she thought it was a waste of money. Judith's face transformed before my eyes. The warm maternal mask slipped, revealing something hard and calculating beneath. Well, you're her husband, she snapped. What's hers is yours, right? That's what marriage is. We were just being practical. Practical? Marcus echoed. How is lying practical? We didn't lie, Robert grumbled. We simplified. You told me Eliza refused to help with Dad's dental work, Marcus pressed. That was a direct lie. The silence that followed was damning. No denial, no explanation. Just the quiet confirmation of deliberate deception. Jason looked stunned. So, all those times you thanked Marcus for helping me? It doesn't matter where the money originated, Judith said, her voice brittle. Family supports family. Eliza is just too proud, always wanting credit. Credit. I found my voice at last. I never asked for credit. I never even told Marcus. You were the ones who twisted everything. You didn't have to tell him, Robert retorted. The way you keep those receipts, you were just waiting for the right moment to hold it over all our heads. That's enough, Marcus said, standing abruptly. We're leaving. Judith's composure cracked entirely. Marcus, don't be ridiculous. Sit down and finish your dinner. No. He pulled my chair back, helping me up. I won't sit here and listen to you insult my wife after everything she's done for this family. As we walked to the door, Jason followed us. Eliza, I had no idea, he said quietly. Thank you. Really. His sincerity brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I nodded, unable to speak. Behind us, Judith called out, her voice shrill with panic. Marcus Allen Peterson, if you walk out that door. The threat hung unfinished as Marcus closed the door firmly behind us. In the car, the silence was different from that morning. Lighter somehow, despite everything. Marcus took my hand across the console. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For what?" "For not seeing it sooner." I squeezed his hand. "You see it now. That's what matters." As we drove away, I watched his parents' house recede in the side mirror, growing smaller with each passing second, just like the power they'd held over our marriage. The drive home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Something had shifted between us, a wall crumbling, letting light filter through the cracks. Marcus kept one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine tightly, as if afraid I might slip away. When we reached home, neither of us moved to exit the car immediately. The engine ticked as it cooled, marking the passage of time in a world that felt fundamentally changed. "I need a drink," Marcus finally said, his voice rough. Inside, he poured us both generous glasses of whiskey, something we usually saved for celebrations. This wasn't a celebration, but it felt like a moment that required acknowledgement. We sat on the living room couch, the familiar furniture suddenly feeling like a stage set for the most important conversation of our marriage. "I've been blind," he began, staring into his glass. So completely, willfully blind. I took a careful sip before responding. "You saw what you expected to see, what they wanted you to see."
No.
He shook his head firmly. "Don't make excuses for me. I should have noticed. All those times they thanked me for things I didn't do. I should have questioned it. They're your parents, Marcus. You trusted them. And I should have trusted you more." He looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "How long has this been going on? How long have they been using you like their private bank while making you out to be the villain?" I traced the rim of my glass, considering my answer carefully. "Since about 6 months after we got married. The first time was Jason's tuition, then your mom's surgery, then the roof. After that, it just continued." "Why didn't you confront them? Or, at least tell me?" The question hung between us, complex and painful. "At first, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make it a big deal. I could afford to help, and they're your family. But then, when I realized they were taking credit for it all." "You still didn't say anything," he finished, his voice gentle but confused. "I was afraid." I admit it, the words hard to force out. "Afraid you wouldn't believe me over them. Afraid you'd think I was trying to buy your family's affection, or keeping score, or..." I trailed off, the fears sounding smaller now that they were spoken aloud. Marcus set his glass down and took both my hands in his. "I'm sorry," he said, and the simple words carried the weight of all the moments I'd stood alone while his family rewrote reality around me. "I'm so sorry I let you stand in the dark. That I believed their stories. That I didn't see what was happening right in front of me." The tears I'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. "I just wanted to be part of your family. I thought if I helped enough, if I proved myself enough." "You shouldn't have had to prove anything," he said fiercely. "They should have welcomed you simply, because I love you." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything finally acknowledged between us. "I need to talk to them," Marcus said eventually. "Alone." I tensed. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "No, but it's necessary." His jaw tightened. "They need to understand that things are going to change." 3 days later, Marcus drove to his parents' house while I waited anxiously at home. The hours stretched endlessly until I finally heard his key in the lock. His face when he walked in told me everything. "They didn't deny it," he said, dropping onto the couch beside me. "Not any of it." "What did they say?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. "Mom said you were too proud and wanted credit for everything. Dad said they were just trying to maintain family harmony." As if lying about thousands of dollars was somehow the path to harmony. He laughed bitterly. "When I pushed them, Mom finally admitted she thought you were trying to show them up, to make them feel small by flaunting your money. That's not." "I know," he said quickly.
I told them that.
"I told them you never asked for recognition, that you specifically tried to make the help seem anonymous or like it came through me to protect their pride." I leaned against him, feeling exhausted. "Did they understand it all?" "I don't know," he sighed. "They kept saying they were just trying to protect me, that they didn't want me feeling like I couldn't provide for my family, or them." as if my ego was more important than the truth. What happens now? I asked, the question encompassing far more than just his parents. Marcus took a deep breath. I told them they had a choice. They could recognize what they've done, apologize to you directly, and start being honest, or they could lose both of us. My heart stuttered. Both of us? Marcus, I would never ask you to choose.
You didn't ask.
I'm telling you what I chose. His eyes were clear, resolved. You are my family, Eliza. My first priority. And anyone who tries to hurt you, to undermine you, to make you feel less than even my parents, doesn't get unlimited access to our lives. The words washed over me, healing parts one hadn't realized were still raw and bleeding. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in my own marriage. They'll need time, I said softly. They can have time, he replied, but they don't get to have us until they figure it out. That night, as we lay in bed together, Marcus pulled me close against his chest. I'm on your side, he whispered into my hair. I should have been all along. And for the first time since I'd discovered the two-faced gratitude of his family, I allowed myself to fully believe him. 3 weeks passed without a word from Marcus's parents. In that time, something subtle shifted in our home, like the air after a thunderstorm, clearer and lighter. Marcus and I moved around each other with a new awareness, a rediscovered tenderness. The truth, once finally spoken, had created space for us to breathe again. Jason called twice. First to apologize for his unwitting role in the deception, and later to invite us to coffee, just the three of us. He was different away from his parents' influence, more thoughtful than I'd given him credit for. I always wondered why they were so weird about money stuff with you, he admitted over lattes. Now it makes sense. They were spinning this whole narrative. They're still your parents, Jason, I said carefully. This doesn't have to change your relationship with them. Maybe it should, though, he replied, surprising me. If they could do this to you, what else have they twisted? On the fourth Sunday without a family dinner, the call finally came. Judith, asking if they could come over to talk. Marcus looked at me, eyebrows raised in silent question. I nodded. Ground rules, he told his mother. No dropping by unannounced. You call first, we agree on a time, and you come to our house, not the other way around. The surprise in Judith's "oh" was audible even from where I sat. Marcus had never set terms before. They arrived exactly on time, looking smaller somehow. Robert without his usual bluster, Judith without her orchestrated warmth. They sat stiffly on our couch while Marcus and I took the chairs opposite, a deliberate choice, positioning ourselves as a united front. We've been doing some thinking, Robert began, clearly uncomfortable, and some talking. A lot of talking, Judith amended, her fingers twisting in her lap. About what happened. Marcus remained silent, waiting. I followed his lead. We didn't see it, Judith continued when the silence stretched. How it looked from your perspective, Eliza. We just thought, well, we thought we were protecting Marcus's pride. By lying to him? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. By. She struggled for words. By maintaining certain appearances. Mom, Marcus said quietly. That's just another way of saying lying. Robert cleared his throat. We were wrong. That's what we came to say. What we did, taking credit for your help, making it seem like you weren't willing to support the family, it was wrong. The admission hung in the air, startling in its simplicity after so many months of complications. Why? I asked, the question that had haunted me for so long. Why paint me as the villain? Judith and Robert exchanged glances. It was easier, she finally admitted. Easier than accepting that our son's wife had to rescue us financially. Easier than admitting we needed help at all. Pride, Robert added, the words seeming to cost him. Stupid pride. It wasn't just about money, I said, needing them to understand. It was how you treated me. The cold looks, the sarcastic comments, the whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. You made me feel like an outsider while using my money to solve your problems. Judith flinched. We didn't realize, we didn't think you knew about the things we said. That makes it worse, not better, Marcus pointed out. Another uncomfortable silence fell. Then Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "We can't pay it all back at once," he said, holding it out. "But we started a payment plan. This is the first installment." I didn't reach for it. I never asked to be paid back. "We know," Judith said softly. "That's why we need to do it." Marcus looked at me, silently deferring to my decision. After a moment, I nodded, and he took the envelope. "If we're going to move forward," I said carefully, "we need new rules. No more secret requests. No more pretending. If you need help, you ask both of us, directly and honestly. And no more unannounced visits," Marcus added firmly. "No more divide and conquer tactics." His parents nodded, chastened in a way I'd never seen before. "We'd like to try again," Judith said, "if you'll let us." I studied their faces, searching for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to. Instead, I found something unfamiliar, genuine regret, and perhaps even respect. "We can try," I said finally. The relationship didn't transform overnight. There were still awkward pauses, moments when old patterns threatened to resurface. But gradually, over dinners and holidays and everyday conversations, something new took root. The passive-aggressive comments stopped. Not because they suddenly adored me, but because they understood I wasn't the naive outsider anymore. I had an ally in Marcus, who noticed every slight, every attempt to revert to old ways. One night, 6 months after the confrontation, we were driving home from a surprisingly pleasant dinner at their house when Marcus reached for my hand. "You know what I realized?" he said. "They actually like you now. Or at least, they're starting to see the real you." I smiled, remembering how Robert had genuinely thanked me, not Marcus, for recommending a doctor for his shoulder pain. How Judith had actually asked my opinion about redecorating their living room. "I don't need them to like me," I replied. "I just needed them to see me, and I needed you to see them clearly."
He squeezed my hand.
"I do now. No more blinders." That night, as we got ready for bed, I noticed the shoebox still sitting on our closet shelf. I hadn't opened it in months, hadn't needed its evidence to validate my experience. "Should we get rid of this?" I asked, touching the lid. Marcus considered it for a moment. "No," he decided. "Let's keep it. Not because we need it anymore, but because it reminds us." "Reminds us of what?" He pulled me close. "That sometimes the truth doesn't need shouting. Sometimes it just needs a shoebox and a little silence." I smiled against his chest, finally at peace with a truth that no longer needed defending.